Welcome everyone, you're listening to Nephology, the podcast dedicated to crypto, accounting, business, finance and much, much more. I'm Joe David, the founder of Nephos Group in Minor. Please note that all conversations recorded are professional opinions, and if you'd like to know more or gain support, please reach out to the team directly. Now on to the next episode. Welcome everyone to the latest episode of the Nephology podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Gilson today. Gilson, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you do have a cold, you did tell me.
Yes, I am good. I'm soldier on, I've been brave.
Thanks for coming in. We've known each other not for a really long time, but probably for the last kind of 6 months or so. Yeah. And yeah, you guys are doing some really interesting stuff in the kind of the crypto compliance sort of space, and I'm really interested to dive into, what some of those regimes look like in the UAE, but also the wider GCC. But first of all, do you want to give the listeners a bit of a background on you and how you got into where you are today? Yeah,
so I come from traditional finance, more investment banking, did all the big names that you can imagine, mostly in Europe. When I moved here about 4 years ago, that's when I actually got, from an institution, more perspective into actual crypto. I was part of an initial team, one of the first regulated exchanges at ADGM.
Okay.
I was there as the head of custody, first movers, really hard process, really rewarding, eventually got regulated. And from that, actually, that's where I got the idea to start VAF. So when we started, there was no VARA. There was a DGM. But we could already see that the way the market was moving, very particularly in Dubai, we can see there was a gap there, a disconnect. Me coming from traditional finance, I think one of the first issues, obviously, that still exists today is bank accounts, both for individuals or entities in the crypto space. And I thought we could address that and do better than what I was seeing at the moment. It was more of over-the-counter, back streets of Dubai kind of off-ramping system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and since then we haven't looked back.
And VAF then, where did VAF, obviously you mentioned VAF came about, through your previous work, but yeah, maybe you can talk us through, VAF's, how it become what it is today and the type of people you look after.
Yeah, so initially the idea, as I said, was to we created a source of fund, source of wealth report to allow people to off-ramp. That was leveraging some of the connections I brought from the TradeFi space in banking.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I can take you guys to some of the banks that I work with, that I know. So that was the initial idea. That's what we wanted to do, focus on it. Very soon we realized there was not really a business model and you needed to kind of diversify.
Yeah.
And then how we became naturally a fully-fledged compliance firm. We do focus on digital assets. We are not so vocal about it, but we actually have clients in other spaces,
okay,
in other sectors, from a small private bank, from an investment manager, and then obviously your VASPs, traditionally. We do different services, from help you navigate regulation when you come into this country. Should you go DGM? Should you go the IFC? Should we go the MCC? Where do you feed your business? We now have RACDAO. How do you navigate all these free zones and so on? And we do also, in terms of, like, say, source of funds, we still do that. That's still a big part of it, not only just for individuals but also for entities, to actually help them achieve banking services. But we help with everything from A to Z, writing your policies, your procedures, doing your KYCs, and also your KYWs, KYT, whatever you want to call it.
And I think in the UAE, and you obviously know significantly more about this than me, but obviously they've been on the grey list from a compliance AML kind of perspective. Yeah. I know that the country is keen to move away from that.
Absolutely.
And I imagine that has also grown quite a large part of your business then, by companies coming to you and going, look, we're being now under pressure from maybe people above us or whatever it may be to get their stuff in order. Have you seen a big shift in compliance? Have you seen a big shift in I guess, people's attitude towards compliance, or?
Absolutely. I think it's been the biggest shift I think has come from the top.
Yeah.
That for me, and that kind of made that shift or below, right? Because I think in the beginning, and myself, I came from investment banking, I used to see compliance as a cost, deal killers, we used to call them.
Yeah.
But today I can see the compliance is really your first defense. And as you can see the type of fines that the government of UAE had been imposing on some business for failings in compliance, AML, CFT. Big firms, very recently saw some big name being announced that been fined at the DGM. You wouldn't think those kind of guys would be fined. But they are, because the government is really proactive and they want to make sure that everybody has some sort of transaction monitoring, some sort of AML CFT in place.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the major shift, and I can see it absolutely. Because also banks, go back to that, they also now are asking you, they're like, okay, I'll give you a bank account, but I need to understand what's your business, because if you don't do financials, if you don't have a compliance program, how can they really trust or understand what you're doing? And how do you think you have a business?
Yeah. But what's crazy about that, though, is that the market was even willing to do it in the first place, which obviously it was, right?
Yes.
It was willing to, banks and what have you, were willing to give accounts to people without fully prepared financials or whatever it may be. And I remember when we first met, and one of the things you talked about was the being able to kind of do proof of funds, if you like, so that people could get car finance or things like that. And
absolutely.
And it does show that when the country does focus on trying to achieve something such as this AML compliance piece, it can put these measures in place, and I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely. The mandate has been clear from above, from the rulers, and I think since then you can really see not only and you see then the free zones being more proactive on these things. Well, before, and even though it's not really their place, because you have free zones like, say, you have financial free zones, okay, they have their own regulator, but then you have just commercial free zones like the MCC. They are not a regulator, right? They're just a free zone. But you can see them also being way more proactive.
Yeah.
Recently, the MCC, for example, formed the compliance hub, which we are part of it.
Okay.
And that is just something to help the licensees, be better prepared. Because I was having a discussion with a client yesterday, I think we had a call, and he's trying to create an FT marketplace. He's been operating for a long time, very successfully. And he must be regulated. But he's afraid that once he brings KYC, he's going to scare his users away. And we were having this conversation, and he himself recognizes that either you like it or not, that's the way the world's moving.
Yeah.
I understand perhaps you don't want to be a first mover. You probably hope that OpenSea will bring it in, and then everybody will be a little bit upset for a few weeks, and then they have to comply, and then you bring it as well. But there's also an element to say that regulation has a value to it, and the objective of that is to bring trust to the consumers, and that's what we've been lacking. Regulation is not going to solve everything, but it's definitely going to take this particular space much forward than where we are right now.
And I think for me, as you say, regulation isn't going to solve everything, because in a very regulated traditional financial market, there is fraud and
all the time.
All this sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
All the time. So something, and I say this a lot. Something like FTX was not a crypto problem.
Yeah.
FTX was a governance and
Thank you.
all that sort of thing, right? It was nothing to do as such with crypto. That could have been any business in any walk of life.
Wirecard.
Right. Exactly. So I totally agree with you that it is really important. But I also think that I do understand some of the people that are in crypto that go, well, hang on a second, we got into this thing, we created this thing, or whatever you want to say, because we didn't want all this huge oversight. So it is a double-edged sword, but like you say, you can't have both. You can't have mass adoption and freedom. You've got to have an element of if you want to hit mass adoption, you've got to have an element of compliance and regulation and things like that.
Absolutely. And I think the failings that we have, and again, crypto is always held at the highest standard, right? No matter what we said. Like, again, we had Enron, Wirecard, JP Morgan, which I work for, they pay fines like crazy. But those guys are okay.
Yeah.
Crypto are the bad guys.
Yeah.
Right? So for sure, they will instill confidence on the consumers. And again, regulation is not going to solve everything, but it's a big step towards that way, for sure.
And do you think people are coming to you now? Obviously, there's going to be an element, same with us, people are coming to us more now because they have more obligation to file. But a lot of them are coming in, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, how many people do you think are coming to you because they have to, and how many do you think are actually sitting there and going, do you know what? As a business owner or as a fund or whatever I may be, I have an obligation, and therefore I know the government are forcing me to, but actually I want to as well. Do you see that?
I've seen that for the first time. I see it more and more. People that actually the government is not really required them already to have policies and procedures in place. They want to have that step. I think people they see what's around them. You don't need to happen to you for you to learn a lesson, right? So they see what's around them. And recently we had some conversations where people say, I want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's refreshing.
Yeah.
Not just in the crypto space. And yeah, definitely, I think more and more we see people that actually, because I think people also understand, and I had, again, clients before in the past where they raise all these funds to an ICO. They didn't KYC anyone, they had no idea who's who. But then they want to raise funds. And then the people they raise funds, they ask him a question. Who are the investors? He have no idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think people have more conscious of this and saying like they have a long-term plan and they think, I need to do this now in order to be successful. Because if I just skip this step, then it just makes me less marketable.
Yeah.
And, in the world that we live today, like if you want to raise funds, there's no way no one is going to touch you if you don't have none of this in place.
No, absolutely. And moving on to obviously we're talking about the regulatory landscape anyway, but moving on to the the UAE, but also we talked before about the GCC in general. It has been seen to be an area where people could come and there be a lot less regulation put on them and things like that. But what do you think the UAE and the Middle East and the GCC, what do you think from what you're seeing, what do they want to become, if that makes sense?
I think that was a fallacy, to be very honest. I think, and that's a message perhaps that, again, there's a lot of people that are in the business of selling licenses. So people come in here and they say, oh, get a crypto license. I mean, people used to refer to this crypto license as a regulated license, whatever. I didn't even know if they understand. They were just saying, just buy this license.
Yeah.
Regardless. I mean, you couldn't get a bank account, get anything, it doesn't matter. Buy it. Right? And now you see people are educated because obviously that took a toll in the ecosystem. So a lot of people left because they were kind of disappointed that they didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve. But for sure, as a regulator, and let's talk about, because we're in Dubai, let's talk about VARA.
Yeah.
They want to build a quality ecosystem with quality players. It's unfortunate to say, but if you are a real small player, you kind of have it really against you to make it. Not just because of capital requirements, the process itself, the type of support. The legislation is evolving, and VARA, as a regulator coming from a traditional finance space, is a very progressive regulator, although a very new one. But nevertheless, I think that the GCC in general are trying to build quality ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And you can see what they've done in Bahrain, for example, with the central bank there, that's regulated. They have been very successful. They are not so noisy. They don't make so much noise about it, which for me, I always find it a little bit strange because they actually have something that works. Because being the central bank of Bahrain, the actual regulator, banking is not an issue.
Yeah.
A lot of people from here actually go there.
Yeah, okay.
But in here, we're also taking the right steps.
Yeah.
So, of course, it's new. It's not perfect, but there's a lot of good people working towards it. I would say that, if they are trying to build a quality ecosystem, and this is what we're going to have.
So, if we've got a crypto project listening to this, and they are based here or they're not based here, and they're looking at VARA, they're looking at ADGM. What does a business need to look at, and what does it need to consider, if that makes sense, before it makes a decision on where it should operate and how it should operate? Because as you say, VARA doesn't want every single business under the sun to be regulated. It
Correct.
wants to be able to be selective. And,
yes.
So there is going to be an unofficial bar, if there's no official bar and things like that. So I guess maybe, rough idea on what sort of costs people are looking at and what sort of things they would need in place. Do you see what I mean in terms of if they were considering that route? Because I think some people will go, I'm going to go to Dubai and I'm going to get regulated by VARA.
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. I think that it just really depends on what you want to do. I think, let's say, for example, token issuance. Mm-hmm. You want to issue a token. I think VARA is the best regulated to do that, because I think the process is straightforward. Not so much. I mean, okay, white paper is not an easy thing to get it right, but nevertheless, it's something you can achieve.
And you probably should achieve.
Exactly. Yeah, if that's what you want to do, correct?
Yeah.
But it's the process is there, and it's a fairly straightforward process, if you could say that.
Yeah.
When you have the right people with the right knowledge,
Yeah.
if you pick up someone from the streets, obviously you can't do it. That's an example. So that's just an example of something that I can think that will depend on what you want to do. Like, say, we got regulated in ADGM for MTF and custody, which is multi-trading facility. So exchange. And you have now people they have licenses and VARA for exchanges as well. So it really depends on, I guess, your target market.
Yeah.
For sure. Costs obviously come to it. Dubai is an expensive place. Abu Dhabi is not much cheaper. But they both ADGM, if we talk about VARA, or FSRA, if we talk about ADGM as a regulator, they're friendly and quite open to the conversation. So again, I feel those are way more progressive than regulators that I used to deal with maybe in England. I
was just going to say that because the perception in the UK is that the FCA don't want to regulate anyone. To be honest, they just want to turn as many people away as they can. I'm not saying I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the perception that
they definitely don't want to sit with you.
Yeah, exactly right. So and I sat down with them as a kind of round table thing earlier in the year, and Binance were there and Ripple were there and a few other kind of crypto projects, and they were engaging, to be honest, and they were but they were very honest that it's not top of their priority list. They've got a hell of a lot of other kind of let's call it normal regulatory applications that go through them. So crypto just isn't. They don't have the experience. It's just not. It's not top of their priority list.
And you could tell about, for example, again, go back to banking. Crypto as a market, it's smaller than JP Morgan's commercial bank. So for them, if you think about it, is that really interest there? Like,
especially when there's risk. Exactly. The risk reward, right?
Exactly.
And I think people do forget that. If you ask someone to run across, Sheikh Zayed Road here, which is 12, 13, 14 lanes of traffic or whatever it is, right? Yeah. And you were going to offer them, $10 or whatever, or you were going to offer them $10 million. Their decision on whether they're going to do that or not is going to be dependent on that amount of money they're given, right?
Yeah,
and like you say, it's the same. It's the same in the banking industry. And but as far as you're concerned, if you've got the right structure behind you, VARA is a progressive regulator.
Absolutely. So I think another point that I wanted to add to your question was that you have to have the right people.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to have people that know what they do and people that are qualified, because that's also part of the screening process. VARA is going to screen you on that.
Yeah, okay.
If you have some lawsuit from another country that you run from and you think you're going to come here and you're going to start new, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? I think obviously we had some examples with FTX and other things that happened recently. Regulators are very aware, and today communication travel fast, information. So, I think that there's the people are key.
Yeah.
To have the key people, so you can also engage the regulator in a compliant, proper way, if I can put it this way, because otherwise, if they can very quickly on your application see what kind of quality you submit and so on. I've heard some crazy stories about the white papers with one page, or like these people are just not prepared. So how do you expect the regulator to take you seriously?
Yeah. And it's funny because they're the people that you'll hear shouting on social media that VARA won't regulate them and they're not interested. And you go, well, you look behind the scenes and you say, well, what do you expect? Would you do business with that person if you were in their shoes?
Absolutely.
And people very, very quickly forget that.
Yeah.
So, we've touched briefly on VARA and ADGM, but there's a new player in town, let's call it. One that's come up behind the scenes a little bit, I think, recently, but is becoming a bit more prominent, which is RAC, Ras Al Khaimah, and their RAC DAO project. So tell us a little bit about that and what they're trying to do with that.
So they're trying to do, James, that kind of leading that side of the project, is obviously a very experienced guy, been here for a long time. they are trying to create a free zone, I guess, for digital assets, non-regulated.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you have projects that are non-regulated, then, like, so if you're going to mint NFTs, things like that, it's a good space for you. They always have other licenses as well. I think what they're doing is really good, because I think also talking about what we said before, the people they are bringing in, they are quality players that eventually, I guess, will have a much easier transition into the regulated space whenever they feel they're ready and their business models evolves as such. And I think that's crucial.
Yeah.
Because once, it's like you say, if you work a little bit harder here, then your journey is likely to be much smoother. And I think from what I've seen, and I had some conversations with them, with the team there, that, they really know what they're doing. I think they're very well organized.
Yeah, right.
They obviously have a very good partnership with Rack Bank as well. So that's a big thing. And I think that, from my understanding, there are plans for them to create their own VARA in the future down the line. So either they're going to be a spin-off of what they have now, or a totally new body. But just the fact that they are putting all these kind of pillars in place just sets you up for success.
And why would you choose RackDAO, for example, over, I'm making this up, IFSA free zone in Silicon Oasis, or even maybe DMCC in not far from here?
Yeah, so I would say mainly it has to be with what your business want to do and the type of license. They all not offer the same licenses.
Okay.
So there will be some that, will offer a couple licenses that are the same. But again, it comes to costs, obviously. It's something that obviously has to be considered that as well. And also, I guess, which ecosystems do you want to be involved? How big is that ecosystem? What does the ecosystem offer you back? How much support you get from the ecosystem itself? So the MCC is a giant. Obviously, it's huge, right? I think ADGM, the IFC are more select, more elite. As financial free zones, more expensive.
Yeah.
RackDAO is new,
so
perhaps more cost effective, more agile. But IFSA is the same. IFSA actually have a great ecosystem. I think that's what IFSA does so good, is that they created a great ecosystem. And I think, in a way, RackDAO is replicating very much what IFSA has done in terms of my model, in terms of having dedicated people for all the pain points that normally you have when they give you the guy that whatever sold you that license. It's your license, off you go.
Yeah. Because it's funny here because as a UK citizen and someone that's lived and worked in the UK my whole life, it is a very different model here in terms of the way the free zones work and all those different bits and pieces, right? And that's why I asked that question around which one would you go to, because not everyone would realize that one will have one license and people will probably just think, it doesn't matter where I register, I can register wherever I want and I can do the same thing wherever. So it's definitely they are kind of all competing against themselves as well, aren't they?
Yeah. So there's an element that you could say that if you register in IFSA for a non-regulated license, you possibly cannot advertise and to buy your services. Or you need to obtain something from VAR. So there's a little bit of a void there as well, actually, in how the kind of the free zones are mapping themselves, where everybody sits, where ESCA sits, and where the central bank sits. But I would say that what I've seen is that they just happened that the salesman from IFSA or from the MCC got to them first.
Yeah, okay.
And that's kind of, they know someone that is already in the free zone. That's what I've seen. And some people have brilliant experiences, and some people have not so good experiences. And I guess you can apply to everyone. I mean, I'm sure that not all my clients are super happy.
Yeah,
some, it's just life.
Yeah. Slightly different approach sometimes with different people. So, talking more generally then around the UAE, GCC as a region. If we put crypto on a map, and we put a pin in where we think are really good kind of solid places to run or set up a crypto business, where do you see the UAE and the GCC in that?
I see leading it. Yeah, absolutely. I think that very agile, pace, changing all the time. I'll see them as a leader.
Yeah,
I really do right now. I'm very curious of what Saudi will do in the future.
Yeah,
they have the funds. Either they have the appetite, I'm not sure. But I definitely see the UAE as a leader. Not only because these are cosmopolitan cities, right? You have a lot of talent, and you can see from the time I moved here, the amount of people like yourselves, like myself, that have moved from London and these other places to here. So Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Iraq, they have a lot to offer. And we can see the new regulations and new things they are creating, even in gambling. So it's very, very progressive. So there will be an element of crypto in that it doesn't exist in this country yet. So I'm curious about when that comes in, how will crypto tap into that? Because as we know, that is big. Like say in Jersey and this kind of stuff, with all the casinos and this kind of stuff online. So I mean, I don't know if it will happen, when it will happen, but I'm definitely curious. I think that for sure they're right there.
Because they're talking about gambling at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, they set up a commission, right?
Yeah, and is it RAC that they've already approved that there's going to be a casino there or something?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know if this is rumors or if I read it as well.
Seen it online.
I've seen something like that as well. They talk about that as well.
Which is it shows as well, I think, of a region like the UAE, like the Middle East, where it's got its traditions and all those sorts of things, but it is willing to look at things in the modern day and say,
absolutely,
we maybe need to move in this direction or in that direction, or and consider these things. But the best thing I like about it is they don't just do it. They actually, like you say, they set up a commission or whatever it is. They set up a kind of select group of people to go, should we do this? What should we look into? Is this something that is benefit?
But I think more important than this is, like you said, for example, you have Mika or Micah, whatever you call it in Europe, right? I mean, those guys have been decided and talking for years. Right? What you have here in the GCC is that they say they're going to do it, and they get it done.
Yeah.
It's like one day you heard about something, and the next day it's like, it's here.
Yeah.
Let's start tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I do like that. I don't know if it's the way the leadership is structured in this region, but things get done.
Do you know what someone said to me, which I found really interesting? I don't know who it was, so hopefully it wasn't you. Otherwise, I forgot that you told me it. But they said that the difference between like a kind of parliamentary system like we have in the UK and the presidential system in the US and things like that is the only thing that the Prime Minister really has to do, or the President has to do, is benefit their own future political career.
Absolutely.
Right? Whereas here, they're passing it down to generations of their family, of people that are very close to them. So they've got a duty to their, you can argue, yes, the Prime Minister and the President has a duty to the people and all those sorts of things. Totally understand all that. But these guys here,
technically,
they have a duty to their family, to their heirs, all that sort of stuff. And it's a very different, if you were passing something down to someone that was your heir, you would, I can understand that as
absolutely. Going a little bit off topic here, but like you can see that with Brexit and Boris, right? Boris was born to be prime minister, and he's gonna do it one way or the other, right? And Brexit was the thing that he chose. Cameron had gone left, he had gone right, and vice versa.
100%,
right?
Yeah.
So that's you are right. They are there to pursue their own personal aspirations, and that's the way the system is. But you're absolutely right. Here, I think that you have that element of you keep it in the family, and there's like you only. But I think it's even more than that. I think that there is again a real will to make it better for the people, and really
they
listen.
Really care about the people.
And really listen, because you see things that are solved so quickly. Like for example, when I moved here, we still had a week that was Sunday to Thursday, the working week, right?
Yeah.
And then I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks before the new year, they just said, from the 1st, we change it. Can you imagine the nightmare this was for like HR systems and this kind of people? Those guys didn't have any Christmas or New Year's,
But
it didn't stop the country. They just get it done. And that for me is like, fair enough.
And it's true, somewhere like the UK, there'd be uproar. Nothing would happen.
But, you had to go to how many votes.
And like you say, here they just go, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to get it done. And like you say, that can be praised. And the one thing that I really love about this place is, and it's touched on what you just said, but it's the entrepreneurial spirit that comes from the top. It doesn't just come from individuals within Dubai or the UAE. It comes from the top that we want to be the best. And we want to be the best in everything we do. And we want our people to be the best. Yeah,
and it's funny because you already had your own business in the UK, but I was full corporate.
Yeah.
Like, I never imagined in my life I would ever have a business before I came here. Yeah. But again, this is something that it kind of came to me coming into this country, seeing like, I think we can do this better. I think I can do it better. And that really came from just being surrounded by people, even from the people at the exchange.
Yeah.
I saw it's because it was actually a local guy, and I was impressed. Like, he could have just been chilling, but he wanted to do something.
Yeah.
He wanted to leave a legacy. So for me, that's impressive. I was like, okay. So I think that's absolutely. I think it comes from the top, but it kind of filters down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, look, really interesting discussion. We've covered quite a lot of subjects there, and many things that we probably haven't had time to cover. But
For sure.
if people want to kind of reach out to you, and if you had kind of one kind of, I guess, takeaway for people to think about, and then maybe contact you guys, what would that be?
I guess mainly would be if you were in the digital asset space, or even you're looking to set up a business, if you're looking some sort of consultancy work around where you should go, answer some of the questions, because it can be confusing, and there's a lot of people shouting out there, making a lot of noise, and sometimes it's difficult to go through that noise. So we're obviously a full-fledged compliance firm, like I said. Our website is VAF.global, and you can find us. You can reach out to us. You can reach out to me directly, and we are here to help. And one of the things that I always say is that, yes, it's important, of course, that I get clients for the clean, but mostly I also want to improve the ecosystem.
Yeah.
I want to be associated with quality players.
100%.
So whatever I can do for that, and I do many times where I have conversations with people that there's no commercial intent behind it, but it's just a question of saying, I love your project.
Yeah.
I would love to support you in one way or the other.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
And I think that's the key, right? Sometimes people aren't ready for X, Y, and Z, and it's not worth it for you guys. We have that same thing, and it's not also worth it maybe for them as well.
Yeah.
But they're a great guy or girl, and they're a great project, and you want to work with them and support them. And our mantra at the moment is elevating growth and maturity and unlocking crypto's potential.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to achieve. Is we want businesses, and the same for you is. And we've talked about this, which is why I think there will be a lot of mutual stuff between us, because we all want to help this industry be better.
Be better, absolutely.
And not because they don't want to be themselves, but because they maybe don't know how. And we've got the skill set from previous lives or what have you to really help them do that. So
for sure.
Yeah. Really appreciate you coming on, Gilson.
Yeah, thanks for having me,
Always
man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
It went fast.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it always does. So yeah, really good to speak to you, and we'll speak very soon.
Thank you.
Take care.